In sooth, I know not why I am so sad. It wearies me. You say it wearies you. And how I caught it, found it, or came by it, what stuff it is made of, whereof it is born, I am to learn. And yet such a want-wit sadness makes of me, that I have much ado to know myself. Those words at the start of The Merchant of Venice by William Shakespeare are spoken by Antonio, a rich businessman who has a sadness he can't quite grasp, doesn't quite know the cause of it, and is often called, and was in those times, a kind of melancholia. It's a sadness without an identifiable cause, and of course that creates a sense of lostness because there's no object to act upon. And this short video is really aimed at sadness, which is something that's not overtly talking about at the Fringe, and yet I see lots of examples of it. And in some ways sadness is a part of the norms of the Fringe. Sadness is seen to be something that's a bit out of place. People are wary of it in what is supposed to be the biggest happy fest in the arts. Somehow sadness is a betrayal. Sadness is something that's spoiling the party. So the default of I'm fine for a lot of people hides sometimes a sadness that would be better spoken about, shared. And even when there's not quite a cause, then that's when you reach out for help with your well-being and help with your feelings. And if the sadness is getting worse, you might want to talk about it or seek some kind of help and support. And so sadness takes many forms at the Fringe, and some of that sadness is more general, and it's the sadness we experience in our lives. And some of it can be very specifically identifiable. Unlike Antonio's melancholia, it's got a very clear cause. But let's start with the melancholia. Sometimes the sheer intensity and search for smiles and happiness, and the idea it's a month-long party, can create its own sense of sadness. Sometimes you suddenly wake up and you're just in a come down sort of place, and it could be that you've overdosed on the euphoria, some of which is not sincere. You've overdosed on just too much smiling, too much happiness, too much positivity, and a bit like you're climbing and you're climbing and you're climbing higher on the roller coaster. Then there's a moment and then down you go. There can simply be a downness about the Fringe that could be a healthy release. Sometimes you might panic around it because you don't know the cause of it, because it's a general cause of simply overdosing on so much of the so-called happiness at the Fringe. And I want to suggest it's important and okay to say if you're feeling down and you're feeling low, and to share that with people that are your friends, your colleagues, and to have theatre companies. And if you're going to watch a lot of Fringe, or there to be a punter, is to be in groups. Sometimes it's better to select them in advance if you're travelling away from home, where it's okay to check in with each other and it's okay to say that you're not okay. So perhaps the hardest one to grasp is the general melancholia that Antonio felt in The Merchant of Venice, and to be able to speak it, and not necessarily to be able to find a cause for it, and just to let it go, let it pass, and if it won't pass, to seek that more formal help that you might need. It happens when cities are really noisy. It happens when everybody's on an up. It happens when there's a slight taboo about allowing yourself to go down to a little bit of a lower state of emotional energy, and so by holding that in, you really crash. And the Fringe crash is regular for some people, and it might take you by surprise too. And it might take you by surprise, say as a performer, on the day after you're getting 5-star reviews, or selling out yet again, or winning an award. And literally there's nowhere higher to go, and some part of even your inner health mechanism takes you down, brings you down to earth, or even lower. And that is not something I necessarily say you should seek, but it can happen, and it's important to talk about it and seek that help. And there are, I would say, healthy ways sometimes of preempting it, and then the crash can be less and maybe not even happen at all. And I'm well aware of people at the Edinburgh Fringe who make it as a general habit, and some do it every day, is to climb to the top of Arthur's seat and just release the physical energy, put the body into a different place where you're breathing a lot, where the sun is rising or the sun is setting, where you're drinking a lot of water because you're going on a very, very long walk. And exercise, whether that be in the meadows, which is a great place to walk at any time of the day in Edinburgh, or whether it's climbing up essentially a mountain, getting right to the top of the Royal Mile, looking down on the vista. All of those things sometimes can give you a little dose of a much more natural kind of well-being and boost than the idea that you're going to crash. And that relates to diet as well, because it's the sugar crash, that can happen. Just drinking and partying, it can be the substances that you're taking that can also give you that downer as well. But so be ready for it. Don't see it as a problem, and just be wary of it creeping up on you at the times when you would least expect it, because the fringe is a frenzy. The fringe can be an overdose, and therefore the body sometimes has nowhere higher to go, and down it plunges. And I would note it when you wake up by checking in with how you feel. I would note it with your casts. If you're in a show, the cast can sometimes check in with each other. But the most important thing is the notion that feeling sad is as important as feeling happy to have a balanced fringe. And then just share a few examples that I've experienced and other people have shared with me about how happiness can have a cause, and you can be very, very aware of it, where it's much more specific. Perhaps not surprisingly, it can be to do with all the metrics, the measures around a show that you're putting on. And you can simply feel sad as a performer because you've had a bad review, that you've had no reviews, that the ticket sales are just not happening for you, that you've went up for an award you thought you'd get and you didn't get it. And it's as equally important to be able to dialogue, to be able to name it, to be able to be okay with the idea that sadness at the fringe is not a spoiling activity, nor is it a sign of failure. And sadness is often an indicator, often a stress releaser, and sometimes it brings you more gifts than constant manic state of constantly seeking happiness. And the healthy place at the fringe is to not keep grasping for the highs all the time. So yes, it's good to get good reviews, but you shouldn't be in a place of expecting them. You can hope for them, and you can put some energy into wanting them by changing your show and improving it and doing all the things that you can do, but don't big it up don't hype it up, and don't have unrealistic expectations or have that sense of entitlement that the only place is down on all those very, very specific things. And so, there are shows that are really good that don't get the ticket sales, and it can just be bad fortune. It can be that you found yourself in a venue that's not getting the footfall, and there's very little you can do about it at the time. And sadness is a good thing to feel, but it mustn't be felt as if you're doing something wrong. Sadness is the healthy sign of the reaction to something that's not going to plan. And once again, that can be dissipated in all kinds of ways that suit you. Sometimes it's about naming the need to get some professional support. And to talk to your friends and to phone home. And some people even get away from the fringe for a day or two, if they can, simply get out of the city. But best of all, I think, is a problem shared is a problem halved, and creating those cultures of support that go with the pressures of a festival like the Edinburgh Fringe. Now, some other things can cause sadness too. You might be disappointed in your own performance. You might come off stage feeling this isn't as good as it was last time or when we were in our home city. And once again, that's about not overreacting to it, not pushing it aside, but realizing that sadness around certain specific things is the healthy reaction of the body to disappointment, to things not going to plan. And once again, it's something that's about, if you can, finding the calm place rather than seeing it as a problem to be solved. Sometimes it's just a thing to be lived with. Now, one of the antidotes to sadness at the fringe is, in some ways, it feels like a short-term fix, but it can also work. And that's to value yourself and your cast to value itself after, say, a review that didn't go to plan or something that hasn't worked out. That sadness can simply be about treating yourselves, about cooking for each other or going for a meal, and about making sure that you're just not in that manic state. And I know lots and lots of companies that go out to Rosslyn Chapel for a day trip, or down to the riverside, or down to Leith and walking along the seafront down there. Getting out of town on a bus doesn't need to cost a lot. And to make sure that you treat yourselves to breakfast or a celebratory meal, or crack open a bottle of champagne and just say we're all worth it on the day that you got a 1-star review. And you can offset the crazy manicness of the Fringe with a little bit of just party enjoyment that largely is about affirming yourselves for real. Now, other forms of sadness that can happen at the Fringe are when there's conflict. You can feel sad because a cast is in conflict, relationships break up, you might hear bad news from home, and that's all kind of magnified because the Fringe itself is so intense. And I think you have to find what suits you, but again, bringing it down to normality and bringing it down to earth, and just being in good company, being with friends. I say there's certainly well-being is catered for at the Edinburgh Fringe. There are people you can go and speak to rather than letting things get worse. But at the heart of all this is my plea to you to see happiness as important, at least as important as unhappiness, and unhappiness as important as happiness. They are not things where they're on a line where if you're unhappy you've got to find happiness. They're places to be that are really important to you, your self-discovery. And we are at the Fringe to be real, and to be a real human being is to be in your emotional landscape. And happiness, if you're open to it, can sometimes be a really important creative gift for you. So if you are still with me, this is an invitation at the Fringe not to traumatise the state of unhappiness or sadness. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to be sad. And whether that's got a really clear root cause, and therefore you might take very specific action, or whether it's just that sense of melancholy, in sooth, I know not why I am so sad. Treat it with love and respect, because you are worth it.